Okay, here we are in 11p, and now Paul's wording becomes even more pointed than before. You'll notice that in the lower window here, where I'm moving the window, we had stopped at Valerian and Gallienus, and look at the period there, with the highlighted in light blue in the lower window in the center, toward the bottom. 253 to 260. This, in Greek, in the top window, is all one word, anakephaleostaste. It means to gather under one head. And what's happening to the Roman Empire at this time? You got Valerian and his son Gallienus. There is essentially one head. We've seen time and again how there's basically a 4-generation curse operating. And now we have really one guy and his son Gallienus. Alright? That's one head in two parts. Gallienus is in the west, Valerian is in the east. Valerian will lose his life by the end of this is why I'm creeped out over the syllables here. By the end of, see, 260, 260, 260, 260. And that's what this RomanEmperors.org website is calling the end of Valerian. Now, of course, you know, again, I should be seeing a 3-year swing, and why I'm not seeing it, I can't account. I don't know. All I know is that the text is pretty pregnant for what's actually happening in the Roman Empire at this time. You got Valerian, and then you got his son Gallienus. Gallienus will survive his dad and will go on ruling until 268. So look at this. All trial matters, tapanta en toi Christoi, with my bad American accent. 267, 268, that's pretty good. That's how long Gallienus rules. See Gallienus in green there in the lower window where I'm moving the text. Okay. 253 to 268. Now your colors for these might be different when you go to the website because my, they're link colors. Each one of those names in bright blue is a link, but it might be a different color on your computer because your link colors might be different from mine. 253 to 268. Alright, so that covers Gallienus here by himself. This covers Gallienus and his dad together. And that is one head. And then there's Gallienus. All trial matters. Gallienus dies at this point. After him comes Claudius Gothicus. Okay, and that lasts until 270. Alright, so in Paul's chronology, which is a year short, but you know, it could be beginning of year, end of year, so it might not be a year short. Ta, epi, that's 3 syllables. So that covers Claudius Gothicus. Okay? And then after Gothicus, we got Aurelian. So let's have a look at Aurelian. That's in 270. This one is written by Christian Kerner at the University of Bern. Okay? And there's your picture of Aurelian. I mean, this isn't the only site you would use, but it's the thing I like about this site is it's written by people who know something about the subject, and it's reasonably professional, and it's short. Okay? And they do talk about when they see that what the sources say, they also talk about whether they think those sources are accurate. In other words, there's a certain amount of discernment going on in this site. That's why I like it. And if they think something's kind of off or wrong, they'll tell you. That's what I like about Beerley's translation of the Augustan history too, is he makes corrections in it. So, you know, he translates the Augustan history as is, But then he makes footnotes that said, I think this is bogus, here's why. I disagree with this translation that somebody else made, and here's why. So you get a full-bodied sense of the text. And that's, of course, what I'm trying to do here with the Bible text. All right, so now we're looking at 270 to 275. Okay? So then, tois eronios kai. Uranos. Okay? So then we're going through how Aurelian came to power and all that stuff. Okay, Claudius had died of the plague. Okay, see, the plague was still going on. God is still judging Rome. Okay, and Quintilius was his successor for a short time. And then there was another revolt, and Aurelian was proclaimed emperor. So all of these guys didn't even get to have a 4-generation curse. They go almost immediately. And of course Gallienus is dead too. And then here's Aurelius is ruling. Alright? And then we're getting a year-by-year chronology from Mr. Kerner. Alright? I'm going to let you read this on your own. The point is that it lasts for 5 years. Alright? So that goes to what? 275. And Paul's verse goes to what? 275. So God is summing up everything in heaven and on earth through church. And one of the things he's summing up is the Roman Empire. And therefore, I hope you've started to notice there's a kind of mirroring going on. What God is doing to church is happening on earth. He's summing up all trial matters, but they're also happening on earth. There is a reflection on earth, which of course is his point. That's what Paul's been saying here, that church is the determiner of history right here. That's what he's saying. My pastor taught that for 7 years, but he didn't know the meter. I'm seeing it now from the meter too. Okay? I mean, this text is pretty bald. Ta panten toi Christoi, ta epi tois uranos, excuse my bad Greek, ta epi tes geis enautoi. Some days I speak it well, some days I don't. This is one of those days where I don't. Okay? And what's that period? Oh, well, let's have a look. Okay, 275 ended Aurelian. Okay? Right here. See, you see it right here. Ends Aurelian. Okay, who's next? Well, this is the Gallic emperor, so this is like a subplot going on at the same time. Okay? Then from 275 to 276 you got Tacitus. 276, these short rules. That means that there's a lot of conflict. And of course, what is a trial? This means trial matters. It's not just, it's talking about, you might see everything, summing up everything, but he's not doing that. He's making, these are like little bullet points. And they're legal bullet points because the whole prayer is legal. So you have to call it trial matters. And he is talking about the angelic trial. If you don't believe that, then I suggest you get my pastor's classes on the topic. Because he went through this extensively. He spent like, 15, 16 years covering the angelic trial. So I can't do all that in a video. Okay? Proving it from Scripture. I mean, I'm not just talking off the top of my head. I'm just summarizing in a video. Okay, then you got 276 to 282. 282 to 283. So now Paul is coming to the end of, you got Carus. Okay? Carus's rule, he had 2 kids, Numerianus and Carinus. And Carinus. Neither one of those 2 guys lasted very long. And that is what brought forth Diocletian. And Diocletian comes into the fore, because Diocletian is actually under Carus at this time. Okay, that's how he comes to be. He's a career military guy. And Numerianus and Carinus, basically, they die right after each other. And there's some suspicion that maybe Diocletian had a hand in that. So Diocletian, 284. Okay, so Paul breaks it at 283. And 284 is us beginning right here. And this is Diocletian's time, right in here, till about roughly there. You can argue it's a little bit longer than that. That would be 303, like there. But Constantine's going to come out of the Diocletian period. Diocletian made a major change, okay? And that's going to be even more interesting. See, here is God working to sum up everything under Christ. We know that the Antichrist is going to come from Rome. That's another reason why Paul's tracking Rome. We've known that from Daniel. Okay. And now we're beginning Diocletian's time. And now God suddenly changes to talk about a plan. And it's a specific plan that you don't see in translation. Temple showbread, that's this word right here, protesin. And it too is an anaphora that I haven't covered yet in the videos. It's covered extensively in the document, in this Ephesians 1 reparsed document. Okay? In whom even we inherit per temple showbread plan. So what we're being told here is that all this stuff going on is part of a plan. Yeah, and at this very time, in comes dear old Diocletian. All right? That's Diocletian, the picture in the lower left-hand corner. He looks very different in each of his statues or pictures of him that I've seen. That's an interest. He doesn't look that good in the other ones. What makes him different is that he tries to go back to the old days. See, there you go, highlighted in blue. And he basically makes himself into a god. But at the same time, while he's doing that, he's not really claiming to be the god. He's claiming to rule for the god. He's going back to Roman deities. And he gets very, very, what do you want to call it? Snotty on purpose. He's thinking that if he becomes a despot and he demands, godlike loyalty, all right, on behalf of by the troops, that he'll stop all of the soldiers being so hung up on their military power. Okay? And the other thing that's distinctive about him is he established what they just called right up here is a tetrarchy. What he did is he and Maximinian, he got himself and Maximinian to each call themselves after gods, even though he knew he wasn't a god and everybody else knew they weren't gods. It was the idea of honoring the state. That was always the thing with the Roman Empire anyway. So they picked two particular gods. That was kind of like the Egyptian model, because the Egyptians did the same thing. And they're ruling on behalf of those two gods. So he picked, I forget who he picked. He picked one god, and then he had Maximinian pick Hercules. Okay, and you had to bow and scrape when you visited them. You had to. There were very, very formal, extremely formal observances at the palace. Okay, what he was trying to do is to make you think more and better about Rome. Okay, and this is how he came to power in 284. So you can read all about that. Okay, but his big thing was to make it very formal, and then he had to reform the military and he had to reform the economy. So he basically went in for very much a state-controlled system. All right, and the thing that distinguished him, that would bring our boy whatchamacallit, Constantine into play, was this tetrarchy. He and Maximinian each adopted successors, so that there were 4 rulers. There were the seniors, which was him and Maximinian at the time, and then their 2 successors were designated Caesar, and that would turn out to be Constantinus, and I forget the name of the other guy. What was the other guy? Yeah, here we go. Galerius. Okay, named after Galerius. Gallienus maybe, I don't know. but Gallienus was in the east, and then Constantinus was the father of Constantine I, and he was given the west. So you have, as he had shown, going all the way back to 252. Oh, my mouse is slowing down. Oh, this is so aggravating. Going all the way back to 252, this is when that split occurred, where Valerian and Gallienus, both father and son, split the empire. Valerian dies in 260, which is what Paul is explaining here. That left Gallienus alone in control here, and that split is continued and actually institutionalized by Diocletian, who comes in right here. By means of him and Maximinian, okay? Maximinian goes and has the west, okay, or the east rather. And then Diocletian has as his own heir Constantinus in the gray in the lower right-hand corner. And then Maximinius was supposed to get Galerius, was supposed to give to Galerius when he died. So that would assure a continuity of emperors. That would get the troops back under a unified head. What's Paul's theme right here? A unified head, per a plan. And that's exactly what they got. It's a plan. Okay? So you see, God is doing his plan, and now the Roman Empire is unifying under their plan. And that plan will bring about our boy Constantine, which is coming up in the next verse, and that's where we'll pick up next time. To introduce Constantine, I have to introduce Diocletian, and I've already talked about him a little bit, but I have to go back even before Diocletian to show why Diocletian got the ideas he did. And to do that, I got to go all the way back to Aurelian. As you can see, I'm moving the lower window. Again, I'm using the www.romanemperors.org because of the shortness of the pieces and the fact that these are all written by professors at different universities. They tell each, every time you go to somebody in Roman history and look at somebody, because the actual original sources we have are so fragmented, everybody's going to have a slightly different take on what the period represented and what it was. And that's good. It's kind of like using the Bible, except with the Bible we have a complete text. Here we don't have complete text. But we have a whole lot of people interested in what we do have. And so they're all trying to fit the pieces together. And if you read Gibbon, you get one sense of the period. If you read Carey, you get another sense of the period. If you read Mommsen, you get another sense. And that's good. You need to read a lot of different authors. Okay? And what I didn't get exactly from Gibbon, I'm getting more from this guy, Christian Kerner, who's writing about Aurelian. I think it's Kerner, right? Yeah. Okay, what he's covering here in Aurelian, and I want to say Carey had said that, or somebody else had said that, is that Diocletian basically is taking his cue from Aurelian. And that's why we're going to focus on him a little more. In the text, up here in the upper window, in the text we're looking at what happens after this point. Okay? Because this is where Aurelian comes in. Right there. The text is resolving all matters in the heavens. Now understand that in Roman culture, they believed they were ruling on behalf of the gods. So they were, and it was very much a part of Roman culture and Greek as well, that whatever went on earth was reflecting something going on in the heavens. Okay? Paul knows that very well. Okay? And he knows doggone well, I have no doubt about it now, that he's writing about this future time. Because what's going to happen to Christianity, and what Christianity is basically causing to happen, because there are a few who are learning Christ. Remember, see, look, this is 49. That means Christianity's in the tank. Christianity is effectively in diaspora, which we already know from the other videos I did going back to the destruction of Jerusalem in 133. 133, 135 Bar Kokhba rebellion. Okay, now we're 100 years, 140 years later. Okay, so now God is resolving that diaspora which he started. Remember, 120 years, 4-generation curse? The 4 generations after that were 100. There was 133. This is 275. 140 years. Okay, so we're now in the 5th generation after that. Okay, and this is when Aurelian comes to power. What does he do? Okay, first of all, he fights a lot, and in fact, he fights so much that he finally defeats Zenobia in the east, who had taken over from Odanthus, her husband, when he died. He finally defeats her, but he's really nice to her. He gives her a nice, comfortable job in Rome. And he also defeated Tetricus, who was opposing him in the west. Tetricus actually had surrendered, and he gave him a nice, comfortable job in Rome. He was very lenient, all right? Thus, Aurelian talks about golden, all right? So he was a golden ruler, all right? And he was trying to, there's also a play on Marcus Aurelius, all right? Anyway, Aurelian consolidated the empire right here, right at the Chi. Okay, right in here. That's you see the gray in the middle, the bottom middle of the screen. Okay, this is where we are in Paul's chronology, at the Chi. So what's left? See, this is and. There's one more thing to do. Yeah, and the one more thing to do to achieve unity between heaven and earth is to have what? This is totally new. I don't know why the historians don't make a bigger stink of it. This is totally new. You see that blue highlight here? Sol Invictus? Sol Invictus? Do you know who was the last guy that established a sun god as supreme? Heliogabalus, the guy who was 14 when he came to power, being ruled by his mother, the Mamea. I think it was Mamea. Julia Mamea, the Syrian woman. Okay? Who was the niece of Julia Domna, who was married to Septimus Severus. Okay? The son of, the niece of, was a really bad ruler, according to history. I don't see how bad he really could have been if he was only 14. I don't think he was as sexually promiscuous as they said he was. How promiscuous can you be at 14? Okay? You don't even know how to spell your name at 14. All right? But in any event, that was his contribution to Rome as he set up the temple of the sun god in the very middle of the Roman capital, which is now called the Colosseum. All right? And so now we have Aurelian establishing, in order to achieve more unity of the empire. See, this is when people talk about Christian persecution or persecution of Christians, bear in mind that's not the real motive on the part of the people doing the persecuting. They're trying to shore up a broken empire. And any god that wasn't a Roman god, they have to go against. But this guy is doing the same thing that Heliogabalus was doing. And this guy is doing the same thing that the guy that followed, Tutmosis IV, the infamous guy that followed Tutmosis IV, the one, what did he call himself? I forget. He authored the One Sun King. Okay, that was just after Moses. Tutmosis IV followed after Moses left, because that was Amenhotep II, and then Tutmosis IV followed Amenhotep II, and then after him was that other guy, I forget what he called, Akhenaton, or however you pronounce it. Okay, he was the one that tried to impose a one God. Yeah, because Moses had just finished showing that there is only one God. See, the people figured that out, but they didn't like, they didn't like this foreign God over Egypt. And the people in Rome shouldn't have liked this god, especially since the last guy who sponsored the sun god was Heliogabalus. All right? But he was on coins. Okay? You got priests of the sun god. So you see, what this is telling you, just like it did in Egypt, is that Christianity was growing. That they're competing by having one God. Okay? In order to have one Rome, they're going for one God. This is really a surprise to me. I didn't notice this when I was making the video, you know, the P video. This is now Q11Q. So, and then 25 December, Saul's alleged birthday. Now, back in Jesus' day, the 25th of December was really what we would call the 15th now. Or actually, our 25th is the 15th, because Pope Gregory killed 10 days off our calendar. Okay, that was the Saturnalia. You had two festivals in Rome at that time, the Saturnalia and the Siligaria, and they were hooked up together. Okay, so they ended up comprising a total of a week, and that ended up occurring during the same week as Hanukkah. Okay, when the week that Christ was born, if they weren't intercalating, which they weren't. As far as I can tell, they weren't in the year he was born. So Hanukkah and the 25th of December and Saturnalia and Saul's alleged birthday. Now, Saul's alleged birthday, there was no Sol Invictus when Jesus was there. You had Jupiter and you had all the Greek gods with Roman names. You didn't have Sol Invictus, really. It wasn't a separate god. You had Kronos, who was another name for Saturn. All right, Kronos is a Greek name. Okay, Saturn was a Roman name. And now they're calling him Sol. Because, you know, God of the year, sun god, the whole bit. Okay. See, he inaugurated, the new temple of the sun god in Rome. New temple. And then he inaugurates a Ludi and an Agon every 4th year. Okay? So Aurelian is uniting the populace. First he gets a geographical unity going. It's not really all that united, but it's at least on the surface united. Okay? And then he tries to unite them under a religion. This is all going to be precedents for Diocletian. All right, now I want you to pay close attention to this. Under the heavens, upon the heavens, all matters in the heavens. Well, that's exactly what this guy is trying to do in the gray. Is unite the heavens to his own rule. And God's basically doing the uniting, really. Because God's setting a stage. Okay? So by 275, that's what happens. All right? And then we're going to have some more usurpations taking in here with Carus and I can't say his name right. Numerian and Carinus. And then this is where Diocletian is basically coming into his own during this phase right here. It's marked in black now. All matters on earth. Now Diocletian is famous for persecuting Christians. But that wasn't what he was trying to do. He was trying to do what you see highlighted in gray below. Unite Rome under a religion, because when she was united in a culture, that was when she was successful, and they're trying to bring back the glory days that have really long passed. Okay? But for the moment, Rome seems to be on the verge of uniting. Rome seems to be on the road to recovery to her glory days. And this is where Diocletian comes in. He actually comes into power right here. And he'll stay in power through here. And it's because of him, all right, that there is a massive reorganization in Rome. And look at this. In whom we inherit. This is Diocletian's time. See, it got started by Aurelian. Then Carus and Numerian and Carinus are in here. And then this is where Diocletian is actually organizing things. He was a terrific organizer. He had some kind of a personality that really made you want to obey him. I'm not sure what. He was very charismatic, I guess. He wasn't very friendly, but he was very charismatic. So all this was building up to unite the earth again. Because why? Because there was sufficient interest in Christ to do that, even though Christianity itself is in the tank. See, the 49 means Christianity is apostate. Maximum apostasy. Just like when Israel was in diaspora, that, took the temple down. Temple down. Yeah, and temple down as far as Rome was concerned. And so Aurelian helps to, is used to sort of get it started to be united again. And then during this interregnum, well, not really an interregnum, but, Carus and Numerian and Carus, Numerian, and Carinus, with Diocletian really underneath, and then Diocletian, in whom we even inherit. What is the key word here? Inherit. And what was it that Diocletian was famous for promulgating? An inheritance policy, the tetrarchy. Okay? To try to keep all the troops together so they won't go declaring their own generals as emperors. He was the guy who established an inheritance policy. It didn't pan out, but it was long enough to do what really needed to be done, which was to keep Rome going in some kind of a unity. See, this is all about unity right here. For a plan. And the two things Diocletian is famous for in history is establishing the tetrarchy inheritance plan of, emperor, and the plan of the empire. And he unites it to religion. Okay, all this stuff is precedence for Constantine. See, temple showbread, that was literally the baked bread. It was very hard to bake this bread. This was not flatbread. This was what the distant relative of it today is called challah. That the Jews eat on Sabbath. Okay, this was specially baked bread that was put before the Holy of Holies, and then changed every day, not once a week, but every day. And it was really hard to make. You had to go to all this trouble to make it. So you had to have a plan for baking it. And that's why God is referring to it as temple showbread. That's who we are. This is an anaphora that I'll have to explain in later videos. Yeah, and the showbread, the sanctity, the presentation, the sacredness of Rome is what Diocletian wanted to restore, so that people would respect it and not rebel, so that the economy could be restored, so that the safety of Rome could be restored, so that the greatness of Rome could be restored. And in his mind, and there's a lot I'm going to say more about him, in his mind, Christianity was a threat. But in God's mind, God is using him to make Christianity have a stability. Even though God knows it's apostate, at least the word of Christ is being preserved. Now that's really important for all of us. We are all wrong somewhere. Okay? The church at this time is so bad that it's like being in diaspora. That's how incompetent our doctrines are. That's how apostate we are. Okay, but we still have the word of Christ. We're still preserving the Bible, however hard it is to get. We still mention his name. And we still say that he died for our sins. God can use even that. And God can use a Diocletian who was against Christianity, who was actually from a Christian family, and obviously turned against Christianity, okay, in favor of preserving Rome. All right? And that was his idea of temple showbread. And God used him to create real temple showbread so that the Word of God would be preserved in spite of the apostasy in Christianity all over it. And it all started with our boy Aurelian down here, first defeating Zenobia in the east and Tetricus in the west. And there's a fragile peace that ensues at this point. It won't last very long. But the idea gets established, and then on top of that, to try and make it stay longer, he creates a single worship of a single God, which was why they deposed Heliogabalus. Alright? That's why they deposed him. But they're accepting it here. Why? Because Christianity was much more popular by this point. The idea of one God was much more popular. And of course, the 25th of December is actually Christ's birthday. In the year that he was born, it was the 25th, as far as I can tell. Okay? And that was the Saturnalia festival. And there was no such thing as Sol Invictus, really. I mean, that was a nickname of other gods, probably Jupiter, or Saturn. But now they're calling him Sol, sun god. And it's a new temple, all in the unity, because they got to compete against the Christian one God. You got that? Same problem as Egypt went through after Moses left. So now you see the stage set, and next time we're going to resume with Diocletian again so I can get to Constantine, because it's a very confusing story. Next time.